Yamsail, all my beautiful people. How are you doing today? And welcome to the Alternate Point of View. My name is Tracy Lee, and you have found yourself here at this channel where we are discussing the Samantha Wall trial again. We are going through each piece step by step, each witness. I'm also looking at chats and comments throughout the trial. So I just wanted to let everyone know that's what we're going to be talking about. So welcome again. Welcome everyone who is new here. Welcome all of my OGs who have been watching this and continue to go on this journey with me until we figure out basically we want to look at coulda, woulda, shouldas, and I also want to look at kind of really I'm trying to solve this crime. I'm trying to solve this to see if we can figure out who did this to Samantha Wall. I would really like to solve it because I don't want it to go cold. I'm going to do another episode about a different person who was taken out several years ago in a similar fashion. And that was also not solved. And it's a very similar story. But I just want to bring up the similarities in the cases because of well, honestly, I have to just say it's the community around these situations that make them so unsolvable, but yet solvable, which is what's so odd. I have been looking and researching a lot into Judaism and Jewish law and how this pertains to the actual solving of this crime. And I have come to understand that, as unfortunate as it is, as much as I want justice for Samantha Wall, as much as her family I know wants justice for her, they don't really. And I know that doesn't sound great, but we're going to talk about it. So, as we're going through this trial piece by piece, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends. But this is going to be a learning lesson for a lot of us. It's a learning lesson for me because I really feel like it's something that we should kind of need to know about. And it's something that's happening in our society. It's something that I feel like we need to understand because it's real. It's something that's happening because this is what people believe. Okay, this is an entire race of people who actually believe that you shouldn't go after certain people in your circle because that's what your law says. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So I don't know what else to say about it, but that's what it is. So I have looked up Jewish law, and there is things that talk about Jewish law, and I want to talk about the difference between obviously regular law and Jewish law. And we also have biblical law, right? We have all kinds of things that are called what we decide as moral law, Jewish law, biblical law, federal law, state law. There's all different laws, right? So Jewish law has what they say it's based on biblical commandments, right? They call it halakha. I think I'm saying it right. I don't think I'm saying it correctly, actually, at all. But it's a self-contained system that operates according to its own assumptions and principles. So Jewish law, basically, I watched an entire YouTube video about it. They basically took the commandments and interpreted them the way that the Torah, that they wanted them to be to fit the Jewish customs and traditions. That's how they want them to be treated, as far as how they choose to do things in their community. So for instance, when we were talking about the autopsy for Samantha, why was it done so quickly and it wasn't done completely? So apparently, okay, in Jewish law, they have to be buried within 24 hours. It is a, you don't desecrate the body by doing an autopsy. But there are exceptions. I did read that there are exceptions, especially in cases like this. If there is questionable circumstances, they would not allow for an autopsy for, let's say, a heart attack or something like a natural death, something like that. They wouldn't allow for that. There is a portion that I read that said that if, for instance, organ donation, something like that, if they were going to offer their eyes for someone else to see, and if it were to benefit someone, then yes, they would allow that. But normally they don't allow anything to happen. They don't do cremations. Everyone is buried. So there's definitely differences in the law. Also, forgiveness. So they don't agree with, because one of the commandments in the Bible and the Torah obviously is thou shalt not kill. So they don't believe in capital punishment because it has no benefit, because it's better to, the eye for an eye is kind of not defined because that's considered premeditated, if I understand it correctly. I could be wrong. Please, someone correct me. I was trying to learn as much as I could about how this works, but if it's premeditated, then that's not good. Obviously. But they look at they do look at eye for an eye, but also they look at forgiveness. Of course, which Christians do too, right? Christians always look to forgive. But in Jewish law, it's definitely, they look to forgive. And if it does not benefit them to not forgive, or to basically, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. It has to benefit them in some way. So let's say they're working for someone, and someone that they work for. Okay. So let's say Samantha, right? She was in politics. Okay. She was heavy into politics. She worked for Dana Nessel. She worked for Slotkin. She was at the synagogue, right? The synagogue has a huge power over downtown Detroit. So let's say she disagreed with something morally that someone was doing at the synagogue. So there is an example, actually, that there's actually questions you can ask rabbis and say, hey, is it okay if someone at my job or my boss or someone that I know is doing something immoral and I don't agree with it? What should I do? In Jewish law, you should confront the person. If you know them well enough, you should confront that person and basically chastise that person. You shouldn't tell on them. Jewish law is very strict about not being a whistleblower. Don't tell, don't tattle, don't any of those things unless it is going to benefit you in some way. If it's not going to benefit you, if it's going to hurt the whole more than it is going to help, then you don't say anything. You go straight to the person. But if you don't know the person well enough to go straight to that person and say something that might chastise them in some way to get them back on track, let's say, then you don't say anything. Especially if it's not going to benefit you financially. I've noticed that in a lot of their law is if it's not going to benefit them financially, you don't say jack. You just keep your mouth shut. So if you see something, you don't say something unless in some way, shape, or form, it is going to benefit the entire community in some way, or it's going to benefit you in some way. But you don't say anything unless there is going to be some sort of benefit. But it has to be for the whole of the entire whole. not just you, but everyone. And also the finance part is huge. If you are going to whistleblow, you better be financially coming out of it in the end better off than you were to begin with. So they don't look at whistleblowing too kindly. They call it tattle tailing, something like that. But yeah, so if in the Jewish community you do not tell on another Jew, unless it's going to be better for the whole, you just confront that person specifically. And then if they take ownership of what they did and they will do right going forward, if you know them well enough to do that, then you forgive them and you move on, if that makes any sense. So they also believe in the judicial system handling their part of the situation, and the Jewish people will take care of their part of their situation on their own. So I don't know if I'm making any sense. I feel like it's all in my head and it's not coming out of my mouth properly. But basically, they take care of their own stuff in their own community, and everything else is everything else, if that makes sense. So they have the halakha law that they go by. It's very complex, but basically, as it seems to me, from what I understand, is in the Jewish bubble, they stay in their bubble and they do not leave that bubble. And I noticed that because I was looking up a lot of things about Judaism and Jewish law and things regarding a lot of sex, marriage, all these things, because they go basically by the 10 Commandments, okay? And they interpret the 10 Commandments in their certain way, and that is what they build off of, okay? So it is very, very no to have extramarital affairs, to have sex outside of marriage. It's very, very strict, okay? In strict Judaism. So when I look back at the interviews from Samantha's sister, I see her saying things like, basically all of Samantha's life was put out there for the public. It is very obvious that her family is much more upset about Samantha's privacy being violated than anything else. They definitely were unhappy with the fact that her personal life was put on display. And I will have to say that her personal life being put on display is much milder than a lot of other trials that I've watched, where a victim had their information put out there. If not for Paul, honestly, I don't think a lot of her private life would have been put out there as much as it was, because Paul actually told a lot. But she did have a lot of personal life that a lot of people didn't know about, that weren't aware of. And I'm pretty sure her family weren't aware of how integral her personal life was. And it seems like Paul was quite aware of it and was the one person she did talk to and confide in about those types of things. I believe her family is much more traditional, Orthodox Jewish than she was. She was clearly more liberal, more progressive. So I think that these relations she was having with married men, she wasn't married. She was single, living her best life in Detroit. I don't think that was very well looked upon. And I think that as far as Samantha is concerned, her family really does want her to be remembered as this perfect person, this beautiful, and she was a beautiful person. I'm not discrediting that at all. But I think with the way they feel about this situation is they want her to be remembered as this angel, this saint, this giving person to the community. And they do not want her to be drugged through the mud, obviously, with her lifestyle at all. So they don't want these things to be said about her. And that is much more offensive to them than honestly the entire situation, which is really sad. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but Jewish law is different from real law or human law or, secular law. I don't even know how to say it. It's just different. Okay. It's different. So that is why I feel like no matter what I'm doing with this case, no matter how deep I dig into this, it won't matter because her family isn't going to accept that there is a person in their fold that has done this. I think they already have accepted there's a person in their fold that has done this, and they've already forgiven that person. It's clear that they already have because the comments they have made in their interviews, as far as Aaron Pergament is concerned, Aaron Pergament, who was once a stalker to Sam, according to her own sister, is now, he's a friend of my father's, great friend of the family. He's a good person, blah, blah, blah. Jeff Herbstman, oh, he's a wonderful man. He's a great friend of the family. He would never do anything like this. So all of a sudden, all of these people who, I don't think her family was even aware of, as far as Aaron and Samantha having the affair they were having. I don't think her family was aware of that until this trial. But now suddenly Aaron is just like an amazing friend of the family. He's not a stalker. And Jeff Herbstman, who no one liked Samantha to be with, who was kind of in the background. I mean, they dated for a year, but no one really paid much attention to Jeff. But no one really liked Jeff for Sam. But now he's just this great guy, this amazing friend of the family, and he's all in the fold, and so much in the fold that at the synagogue he holds the Torah. I mean, he was basically a unsub. He was a nothing until this happened. Brett Foreman, who the heck is Brett Foreman? This guy worked at Target. And then he's worked on a bunch of Democratic campaigns and apparently had this weird obsession with Samantha. So weird that he's been at every single day of the trial and sitting by her family. Who is Brett Foreman? He literally got 15 minutes of fame because that's how long he was on the stand. But he didn't have a lot to do with Samantha. He was just kind of an acquaintance more than a friend, I would say. And yet he's sitting there with the family. So a lot of these people who were, brought out to be possible persons of interest for Samantha are now suddenly very tight with the family and very close with the synagogue. So it's very strange that all of these people who were kind of non-existent to the family, or maybe partially acquainted with the family, are now like very close knit to the family. So I'm just saying it wouldn't matter, I believe, if I served up the person on a silver platter to them. They would not accept it. Because if it's someone in their fold, they're not going to say, oh, thank you so much for what you've done, because that's not what they want to hear. And I think that's really sad. But just for my own curiosity and sanity, and, because I've already invested so much time and effort into this, I am going to continue down the rabbit hole of retracing this entire trial and witness statements and keep doing the coulda, woulda, shouldas. And I am going to break it down, and I'm going to continue to break down the missed opportunities from Brian. I'm going to break down the holes in the prosecution. And I'm going to keep breaking down the witnesses, and I'm going to keep pointing out how many times they look at the prosecution and how many answers that they suddenly didn't remember. And I'm going to keep doing that because I want to show this trial never should have happened in the first place. And I'm going to show you the bias that this judge who has a very tiny biography, who did not have a criminal law background. She literally worked in real estate law and then suddenly was appointed to be a judge. Makes zero sense. Literally, that had to be someone. It's got to be like shaking hands, somebody that you knew kind of situation, because she was like the only attorney in Dearborn, and she had her own practice. She did real estate law and led litigation, and then bam, she was appointed to be a judge, and in the circuit court, and no one knows who she is, and she runs pretty much unopposed because no one votes for judges. No one cares. No one pays attention. But I'm hoping that after this case, people will start paying more attention to lower level offices, especially judges and councilmen and things like that, because these are the positions that you need to be paying attention to and voting for, and understanding that you do vote for these people. You vote these people in. These are the people that are going to decide if your brother or sister or your cousin or your mother or your father or your kid goes to jail or not, or is accused of something that they may not have done. So I'm just saying. So we are going to watch some more witness statements and just pick them apart and see what in the world is happening. In this trial, what happened in this trial that we could possibly see and catch differently. And I'm also just going to say that a lot of these comments in the comment section are absolutely rude. The things that they're saying about the defense, the defense table, like it's so rude. I can't even, with the comments on what they're saying.
Maybe see it.
Recalling case number 24-000535, People versus Michael Jackson Milano. Appearances, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Brian Nelson for the people.
Dominic DeGrazia on behalf of the people.
And Brian Brown on behalf of Jackson Milano.
And I do know for the record, Mr. Jackson Milano is present, all counsel present, and our 16 jurors have returned to the courtroom. We are ready to proceed with your next witness.
People call Sergeant Darren Zhao.
And these witnesses are in no particular order. I apologize because when I type in this trial, it just comes up.
Whole truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you. You may be seated.
However,
Good afternoon. Please state your name, spell for the record.
Good afternoon, Darren Zhao, DARONZHOU.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. Where do you work, sir?
Currently work for the media team with the Detroit Police Department.
All right. And so are you an actual police officer?
Yes, I'm sergeant with the Detroit Police Department.
And how long have you been a police officer for?
8 years.
And were you working as a police officer back on October 21st of 2023?
Yes.
Now, on that date, where were you assigned at that time?
On that date, I was assigned to the homicide unit, the Northeast Division.
All right. So within all the different police officers who were assigned to the homicide division, are those officers divided into separate units within that division?
Yes.
All right. And the Northeast Division is a section of the city in Detroit?
That's right.
All right. And so on that day, at around 8 o'clock in the morning, did you go to the area of 1368 Joliet Place?
I did.
And why were you called out to that area?
I was notified that there was a scene at the location and it required our response.
All right. And that part of the city that I just referred to, that address, is that in the Northeast section's geographical location?
That's right.
All right. And so did you actually go to the scene on October 21st at around 8 o'clock in the morning?
I did.
And what was your role there when you first arrived?
Yes, my role there when I first arrived is to just assess the scene, make notations of observations that is going on at there. There's certain evidence, things that need to be done. We report out to our unit so we could work in tandem, just so we could figure out information, possibly witnesses that we could locate that might have more information to this particular crime.
Now, are you familiar with what's referred to as a team report?
Yes.
And is that a report that's created within or created by officers within the homicide division of the Detroit Police Department?
Yes.
And what type of information is part of that team report?
Yes. So a team report is a document that we do as a unit. It pretty much gives a synopsis of all the information regarding the scene, evidence that's collected, witnesses that we talk to, and any significant information that we could put on this document, so we could work together with the information that we gather.
And so, did you author a team report in this case, in terms of the investigation of the death of Samantha Wall?
I did.
Now, this team report, is that created just of observations and information that are available at the crime scene at the time that the crime scene is first discovered?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you just walk us through, do you remember exactly what time you arrived at that scene?
It was early morning on that date, roughly 8 a.m. That you stated.
Would that time be notated on your report?
Yes.
If I were to show you a report, would that refresh your memory?
Yes.
May I approach you?
Okay.
Yes.
That refresh your memory?
Yes.
So what time did you arrive at the scene?
8:15 a.m.
So can you just walk us through what you personally did when you arrived at the scene that morning?
When I first arrived to the scene, or me specifically, I approached the scene, observed the individual seen outside the location, talk with the officers at the location, see what they initially did and assessed, and pretty much work with the rest of my homicide team unit in terms of what needs to be gathered at this information, make notifications for evidence techs to make a location for collection of evidence.
Now, did you ever have a cause to enter the townhouse located at 1366 Joliet?
Yes.
And what caused you to go inside that townhome?
When I made the location, information was provided to me that this location was associated to this crime that happened. The victim was in front of the location just to the left of that entrance, and there was an open door. There was blood also leading up into this unit, and that caused us to follow up with the investigation.
So when you proceeded inside the interior of 1366, can you just describe what observations you made as you proceeded into the residence?
Yes. Resident, there's an open door as I walk in and approach, significant amount of blood that was inside the hallway leading into the unit in that matter.
All right. Now, in terms of how homicide scenes are processed by the homicide division, typically do homicide detectives themselves pick up different objects or swab different items for potential pieces of evidence?
Well, for homicide scene, we usually leave the evidence where it is. We try not to disturb anything. My job specifically would be to notify the evidence techs, and they would ultimately do the collection.
Now, in this particular case, do you remember whether there were any cellular devices found within the living room of the first floor of 1366?
Yes.
Describe, if you observed that, where you observed that.
Yeah, that device that you're speaking of was located underneath the couch inside the main den of the location.
So, officer, we're going to show, as part of People's Exhibit 10, we're going to show slide 281. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, that's the black cell phone that was recovered underneath the couch of that location.
All right. Now, you mentioned that typically you will have evidence tech personnel pick up items. Now, are cellular devices different in some regard?
Yes. So the reason why we stand by for them to do so is just to document the location where it was found. So once the evidence text captures the location of where the device is, then we'll proceed with the collection of said item.
So why would you, as a homicide detective, prioritize a cellular device as opposed to any other item of evidence that could be located?
Well, cellular devices, there's a lot of information on there containing whether it's text messages, calls, anything. And it's also, there's a battery life to it too. So in case the phone depletes the energy source, there's promptness that we want to get that device recovered and turn over to our data analyst that will collect the information from it.
And at least at the time where you were able to observe the cellular phone in the living room, did you have any knowledge about who that device might have belonged to?
I assume it belonged to the person that resides at that location.
That's an assumption, but you don't actually know at the time, do you?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in terms of that cellular device that we're looking as part of People's Exhibit 10, did you actually collect that cellular device yourself?
Yes.
May I approach you in here?
Yeah.
I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 11. Ask you if you recognize the object I'm holding?
Yes.
And how do you recognize that?
That's the phone that was collected from the location.
And this is the item that you collected?
Yes.
People move to admit People's Proposed Exhibit 11.
I'm just curious how he has a basis of it. I mean, does he know based on evidence, tracker number, or is he just saying I just remember that this particular iPhone is the iPhone that was seized? It seems like a common phone. That's only just iPad. Other than that.
Well, how can you tell?
I recall that that's the phone that was collected at the location. It's been tagged through property and placed in our evidence tracker.
Is your name on there being the one that put in there, or somebody else did?
It would be under the evidence tracker under the report.
Let me ask you this. You're looking at a picture and you recognize that picture is what you saw, correct?
That's right.
All right. Now, the object I'm holding, does it resemble the object
Yes.
that you've seen on the screen?
It does.
And you remember that from being resembling the object that is depicted on the screen?
Yes.
I'm just no question that it resembles it. I just want to know that he knows that this particular object is what it purports to be. That it's this exact phone that he sees on this particular night or day. And based on evidence, evidence number is ABC whatever. And I haven't heard that yet. He's just saying, does it look similar? And I believe that in the
You
court.
placed it on evidence that night?
Yes.
Do you know what evidence number you placed it under?
That should be evidence 112.
What's the evidence tag on this object?
Evidence tag 112.
That'll be admitted.
Aside from the cellular phone that we just referred to, did you collect any other items that were inside the residence?
I did not collect any other evidence besides that cell phone.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Ross.
Good afternoon, detective.
Good afternoon,
This is Sergeant. I'm sorry, Sergeant.
Sergeant.
Now, when you arrived on the scene, were the evidence techs already there, or did you arrive prior to that?
I don't recall. They came before me. Usually we would notify them once we make the location. So that's why
Okay.
that's why my questions came out that way.
Okay, and you were the officer in charge at this particular scene, correct?
I was one of many officers that arrived at the location, but we have many officers in charge at this time. It was not specified who was in charge
Oh,
of the
okay.
location.
Okay. Did you ever direct the evidence techs to process or collect certain evidence?
Yes.
Okay, so that was your job, or one of your jobs at the scene was to direct evidence techs, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you recovered this phone, what did you do with it?
When I recovered this phone,
Cell phone, yes.
the cell phone that was shown in exhibit, this phone was placed on evidence
Okay.
and turned over to our forensic cell phone team.
For an extraction from the phone, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was this phone ever analyzed for blood or fingerprints?
I don't recall if that's been done.
Okay, so you wouldn't know whether or not there was blood on this phone, correct?
I don't recall if there was blood on this device at the time.
But you didn't do any type of analysis to determine whether or not that was the case, correct?
I personally did not.
Okay. Nor did you request an analysis to be done on this particular phone to find out whether or not there was blood on it, correct?
I personally did not.
Okay. To your knowledge, you're not sure that happened. To your knowledge, correct?
I don't know.
Fair enough. Now, you were able to view the scene, of course, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you also were able to view photographs from the scene, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you noticed in the, I guess, dining room, there was maybe the kitchen, a fruit bowl that seemed to be knocked over, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from your observation, it seemed like it could have been a struggle, correct?
From observation, it was disturbed. That football.
It was disturbed, okay. And did that ring a bell in your mind as when you looked at that particular bowl that it was disturbed at a crime scene?
Yes, I mean it looked like it was knocked over.
Okay. And part of your job is to find clues, is to look at the evidence and the little nuances to see if it paints a picture in your mind, correct?
That's one of many facets of my job.
Of course. And if you see certain things like maybe knocked over that normally may not have been knocked over, you try to deduce whether or not it appears that it could have been a struggle, correct?
That's fair to say.
Okay. And you also looked into the living room, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw like maybe pillows on the floor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from your observation, from your training and experience, it appeared it was a struggle in that room also, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
From training and experience, when you observed the pillows that were on the floor in the living room, in your mind's eye, you came to the conclusion that there could have been a struggle in this room, correct?
To answer your question, items were disturbed in the location. In terms of struggle, I can't really speculate to what type of involvement that happened.
Okay. But as far as being a detective, sometimes you have to speculate, right? You have to look at certain clues and try to arrive to an answer, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And in this case, you looked at the clues and you arrived at an answer, correct? Or at least what you believe to be an answer, correct?
We have theories in our investigation. I mean, those are just things that we look into. But in terms of what specifically happened, we let the evidence speak to what actually happened at the location.
Of course. And one of your theories, it could have been a struggle based upon the evidence as it appeared to you, correct?
That may be one of the incidents or theories, yes.
Okay, just to be clear. So one of the conclusions or theories, one of the theories you had was there could have been a struggle, correct?
Fair.
Okay, thank you. If we can go to exhibit number 10. I guess we can start at slide number 320. And Sergeant, you were able to, you see this picture, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree that this picture was taken from the scene, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that this photograph depicts some money and some credit cards, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were able to personally observe that at the scene, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You go to 268. And detective, you were also able to personally observe what's depicted in 268, which appears to be a wallet and a key fob, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If we can go to 251. And you were also able to partially observe this area in the hallway, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that there's a very high concentration of blood in this area, correct?
Yeah, it's a significant concentration. Yes.
Okay. And you also agree that from your observation, this particular area had the highest concentration of blood, correct?
This area has a significant amount of concentration. Blood,
Okay.
yes.
You would agree that it has the highest concentration of blood out of this apartment, correct?
I would say it's significant concentration of blood in this area.
Would you or would you not say the highest concentration?
Objection. It's been asked and answered 3 times.
Has it been asked and answered 3 times? I've heard it twice at least.
I mean, has it been answered? I asked him whether or not it's the
Maybe
highest.
a different way.
Do you remember testifying at a preliminary examination?
Yes.
Okay. And you remember the exact question, page 272, Okay, now if you go to exhibit number 4, and the blood stain at exhibit number 4, you would agree that there's a high concentration of blood. Matter of fact, the highest concentration of blood seems to be in this particular area, correct? Answer, yes. You remember testifying to that at the exam?
Yes.
Okay. And it was true when you said it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you would agree that this particular picture has the highest concentration of blood in the apartment, correct?
It's a significant concentration of blood in this location.
Okay. Now, were you aware that this apartment had a Macintosh, a Mac computer upstairs with a mouse and a keyboard?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever direct your forensic techs to get latent prints from these objects?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there something that can refresh your memory as to whether or not you gave that directive?
I don't know if I gave that directive, but I don't recall that being done.
To be fair, that you did not get that directive, correct?
I don't recall if it's been done.
Would it be also fair that you didn't give a directive to your forensic techs to lift any latent prints from a suspected vibrator that was found in the bathroom?
I don't recall having them pull any prints from a vibrator. No.
Okay. And you were aware that there was a touchscreen ADT system inside of this residence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it would be fair that you never directed the forensic techs to lift any latent prints from the ADT system, correct?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Now, as a detective, are you familiar with robberies as part of, I guess, investigating homicides?
I'm familiar with investigating homicides.
Okay. And are you familiar with investigating, I guess, a theory of a particular robbery if you're investigating homicide?
That's something that we would consider, but
Okay. And certain variables that you consider are whether or not it looks like certain items were ransacked, drawers open, correct?
Yes.
Whether things were taken, correct?
yes,
Such as maybe money,
that would be an item.
such as a purse, a wallet.
Those are things that we consider, yes.
Okay. Another thing could be a computer, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Another thing would be car keys, correct?
Sure.
Okay. And you would agree in this particular resident, there was money that was in plain view that we saw earlier, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It didn't seem like it was disturbed, correct?
No.
Okay. You also agree that there were credit cards in plain view, correct?
Are you referring to your exhibit earlier that you showed?
Yes.
Those were all inside the wallet. They weren't out
On the
displayed.
So you're telling me that the credit card, which was in a separate place next to the couch, was removed from the wallet and then placed on the table by the couch?
Those items are documented as captured by evidence techs. Those items would be removed from the person to know exactly what items were in there and then taken a picture of.
Okay. So if we can go back to slide number 268. And if we can go to slide 265. And you would agree that there is a ID that is outside of the wallet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from your understanding, the forensic tech took that particular ID out the wallet, correct?
This item would have been taken out
Okay.
outside the wallet, yes.
And you would agree that the wallet or the photograph of 322, you would agree that this is in a very separate area than what we just previously saw. So just to be clear, you're telling us that somebody took the money in wallet, the money in credit card out of the wallet and moved it all the way to a separate part of the apartment just to document it? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, the items were taken to capture all items that were in the wallet. And this,
Okay, but you would agree that there's nowhere in this photograph there is her ID, correct? You would agree that her ID is not in this photograph, correct?
That's correct.
So you're saying that in this photograph, you're saying that allegedly her contents of her purse were removed and placed in another location, but you forgot to take out her wallet, which was also inside of her purse? Is that what you're telling us?
Can you repeat your question?
Okay. You can visualize what we're looking at, correct? So you're telling us that the contents of her wallet were allegedly removed and placed on this table in the living room, but you failed to place her ID or driver's license in the same photograph, but allegedly it was also in her wallet. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
So you're saying that the ID is not captured in this photo. That's
Yes,
correct.
yes.
But those items, in my understanding, if I can recall, that they were items from that purse.
Okay. From your understanding, will you just base it upon your memory or what?
Based on my recollection,
In a separate place next to the couch, certain variables that you consider are concentration of blood. Back to slide.
items were taken to capture all items that were in the wallet.
Okay, so I want to point out in this picture that these items are sitting on top of, as you can see, blood, 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 blood. Okay. And he also just got done saying that he wasn't aware if the evidence technicians were there before he got there, because usually they get there and they direct the evidence technicians what to do. So he could not recall if the evidence technicians were there before he was there or not. But then he states that the evidence technicians would have emptied out her wallet to take a picture of the contents of the wallet. Now, if you notice, the driver's license picture was taken beside the wallet at the front foyer entrance. All the other items that were taken out were taken and set by the sofa on this end table. And set out to be taken pictures of, but you can see all of this blood around what they decided to sit all of this stuff out of her wallet to take a picture of. Do you think there was maybe anywhere else in the house they could have sat that stuff on? Or maybe they didn't have to take pictures of all of that stuff at the scene? Or, could they have taken an inventory of that stuff in a better way other than possibly on top of blood at a crime scene? I'm just pointing that out. That's not the best place possibly to sit to take an inventory of someone's personal items in their wallet. As you can see, where all of this blood is sitting. Just to, point that out. That makes zero sense. So, yeah. I just want to say.
Now, they were at the location at the time of that incident that wasn't taken out.
Okay, so you said possibly. So would it make sense to move something from another location and place it to a location where things are already existing and then photographing it? Does that make sense?
No.
Okay, so thinking back, you're telling us that as the sergeant detective on the scene, you're telling us that's what happened, that these contents were taken from her purse and then moved to another location and then photographed with other things that were already there? Is that what you're saying?
I'm seeing that some of the contents that was inside her purse were taken out to look at and photograph.
Okay.
And in my understanding that these may have been the cards.
They may be cards. Okay.
Yes.
Would you agree that maybe the only thing that was removed and photographed from her purse was her driver's license?
That may be so.
Okay. And it's possible that you're confused as to what actually was removed from her purse, correct?
Perhaps.
Okay. And you would agree that her purse, if we can go back to or if we can pan out on 322, look at 322. You would agree that this is a table that seems adjacent to the couch in the living room, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And this is where the credit cards and the money's at, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if we go back to 268, 265, I'm sorry. You would agree that her purse is next to a bike by the steps as you enter the apartment, correct?
That's correct.
And you would agree that these are in totally different areas, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So just to be clear, you're probably mistaken about taking those credit cards and the money out, correct? That'd be a fair statement, correct?
We took items out of that purse. But
I'm not disputing that.
yes.
My question is, would it be a fair statement that you're mistaken on taking that money and the credit cards out and moving them over to the couch, correct?
There was items that were taken out from this purse.
Okay. And the items that were taken out from the purse are photographed next to the purse, correct? Such as the ID, correct?
That's one of the items.
Okay. And you don't want to disturb a crime scene, correct? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose of taking pictures are to capture items in their original location, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you later needed to testify to it or illustrate what things were, that's the purpose of taking that picture, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as a detective, it would make sense to remove an item from the entry point and then photograph it in an entirely different room next to items that were already presently there.
Or
That would
next
make
to
sense.
blood.
Objection. Whether it makes sense to Mr. Brown or not is irrelevant. So
I'm just asking to make
whether it makes sense to him is of no relevance here.
I'm asking if it makes sense to him, not me. I didn't say it doesn't make sense. I'm asking him, does it make sense to him?
Alone.
Thank you. Now, I'll repeat the question. Does it make sense to you as a detective, as a sergeant, in homicide, to remove items from a bench in the entryway and take the items out and place them in another location of the house next to items that were already there? Does that make sense?
So these items were photographed at a location that's separate from.
Okay, does it make sense to you? I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. Yes or no? Does it make sense?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Jeez.
And you were also able to identify, or from your opinion, suspected footprints, bare footprints inside of the blood, correct? We'll go to, hold on. 253. From your opinion, that appears to be a footprint, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you come up with a theory, or at the time of your investigating this particular crime scene on that particular night?
Yes.
Did you? At that time, did you think it could have been a possible robbery? Based upon the things that were depicted in the photograph that were left, did you feel that it could have been a robbery?
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes.
You did?
Based on the thorough investigation that we had at that time, there were furniture in the location, especially particular upstairs, that were disturbed. So that was one of the theories we had at the time.
Oh,
that it
furniture
potentially-
upstairs? Okay. Did it appear that any of the drawers had been ransacked or
Oh,
searched through?
the drawers were pulled out.
Did it appear that the drawers were ransacked or looked through?
They appear that they were open, and
So my question is, did they appear that they were ransacked or looked through? Yes or no?
They were disturbed. Yes.
So you're not going to answer the question.
Objection. Argumentative.
You just answered the question.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Sergeant, you were asking questions about whether you ever documented any reports about whether items were taken out of purses or drawers, things of that nature.
Yes.
Do you recall now whether you've documented any of those things in any reports?
It might be documented on the team.
If you might look at a report, did that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Your question.
Yes.
Does that refresh your memory?
It does.
All right. So, did you ever document in any report whether any items were taken out of purses or drawers, things of that nature?
Yes.
All right. Now, specifically, credit card, insurance card. Did you ever document where those objects were taken from?
Yes.
Where were they taken from?
They were taken in, next to this couch area that was shown in the exhibit.
Okay. In the living room.
Yes.
Any further?
Okay. So just because after reading your report, you now know that this credit card was never in her purse, correct?
After looking at my report, it refreshed my memory, and it's understood that that credit card was found next to this couch in the living room.
And to be clear, the only thing that was removed from her purse as far as cards, I guess, were her ID, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any further? Questions from the jury? Write down, counsel approach. When you first saw the wallet in the deceased townhouse, was the ID inside or outside the wallet?
I believe it was inside the wallet.
Where was the wallet?
The wallet was located in the front entrance next to that bike that you see in the exhibit. Sorry.
In which exhibit? Counsel,
Exhibit 10, Your Honor.
you pull it up.
Publishing page 265.
And the wallet is the where?
The wallet is right there next to the tire in that little blue kind of it looked like a little blue bag.
Like ID case?
Yes, ID case. Sorry.
And when you arrived on the scene, did you discuss the scene with the emergency medical staff referred to as medics earlier, who were first on scene?
They already made the location and pronounced the individual. I don't believe I'm in any contact with the EMS individuals at the scene.
Anything further based on that?
No, no.
Anything further?
Just to be clear, when you're saying the wallet, you're meaning withheld her ID. When you said the blue object, you mean
Can I point to the item
Yes.
specifically? If there's a pointer.
Actually, the next picture might show it better.
that? Okay.
Yes, that
Okay.
item that's directly above the
If we go
driver's
back to the
license.
265, if you know if that item was removed, and we can agree that that's her purse, the brown object that's right above the wallet, we can agree that's her purse.
That's a purse at the location.
Okay. And do you know if that wallet was removed from the purse?
I don't recall.
Okay, but that purse was in the same location, correct?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Anything further?
No, sir.
Any other questions from jurors? Write down. Counsel approach again. If you know, was the gold Amex card valid or not expired at the time of the crime scene being processed?
I did not know at that time.
Anything further from them?
No.
Brown?
Nothing further.
Any other questions from jury? Thank you, sir. You may sit down.
Thank you.
Next witness, will we start somebody for 15 minutes or 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure. People call Special Agent Eli Powers.
Okay, so before we get to the next witness, I want to talk about a couple of missed opportunities for Brian. Again, it's going to be the bicycle. He once again mentions the computer upstairs, but not the laptop that was on the sofa. I don't know why this laptop was not mentioned or why they didn't look into the laptop. Also, they focused on these drawers upstairs. They weren't ransacked or anything. They were just open drawers. So clearly when Samantha came home, whomever was in her house, she changed fairly quickly. She obviously was neat about her dress because it was a nice dress. She just came in from a wedding. So she changed her clothes fairly quickly because she left the drawers open. But they weren't ransacked. Okay, you could see that the sergeant was not willing to say that they were ransacked. He just said they were gone through, but they were not ransacked. Also, again with the bike, he didn't mention, that bike was still there, right? Did you check the laptop that was on the sofa? You took her phone, but you didn't take the laptop. That was a question that he could have asked. Also, did the family say there was anything missing of value? Was there any jewelry missing? Did the family say there was any jewelry missing? Was there a safe in the house? Because, normally if people have things of value, they may have a safe. Was there anything like that? There's a lot of questions that could have been asked if they really thought this was a robbery or a burglary or what have you. What is missing? Because there's a lot of very expensive items before you even get upstairs that are just sitting there in the front of the house that, if this is a modus operandi, which is a motive of opportunity, then why wouldn't he take something that is right there in front of him? Like the bike or the laptop or her phone or her car. I mean, all of these things are expensive items that if he's such a thief, could use. So also, as you can see, the prosecution is working in tandem. Okay, they're very in sync with one another. They're both gigantic bungholes. Can I say that on YouTube? I don't know. I'm sure they'll strike me if I can't. But they're doing their job. Okay, they're doing their job and they're doing it very well. Even though their narrative stinks. Okay, but they're doing a very good job of filling that narrative and just following it the way they want to. Brian is missing a lot of good points. Although he's doing a great job, there are some points here that he's missing because you could be asking a lot of other things. He's pushing hard on some stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that he could have really pushed on as far as, again, why would we take pictures of items on top of blood? That's cross-contamination. That doesn't make any sense, because the reason I'm asking and I'm saying that is because if you're going to cover an area, you can get a sense of how a crime scene occurred if you really investigate, by the spatter, by the way, by how the blood goes, the direction, and all of that. You can figure out the possible point of attack. If you have a good crime scene technician, crime scene reenactment person, if you have someone that can actually investigate the crime scene properly, you would need that crime scene to be intact as possible. And actually, this crime scene couldn't have been more perfectly intact if these police officers and detectives and everyone had done their job appropriately and kept it from being tainted. But if little redheaded police officer man did in fact go into the townhome as he said he did, even though the ADT motion sensor claims that no one entered or motioned that townhome until 7:52 in the morning, he couldn't have possibly gone in there and tiptoed around all of this massive amount of blood that they claim was in this townhouse. There's no way. Also, if you're going to cross-contaminate items over blood, you can't see the cast off and all of this stuff and see the direction in which this person attacked Samantha. So I'm just saying you can tell a lot by the blood spatter, the cast off, the pooling, all of this stuff can be determined on exactly, you can tell by the pooling how long somebody possibly was sitting there, laying there, what have you. If you had someone professional come in and do that, like a Dr. Henry Lee, or, you could figure that kind of stuff out, but they did not do that. They very minimally tested things. They tested, like I said, the LaCroix can in the sink, but they didn't test any of the knives by the sink, which is kind of odd. They didn't test the laptop that was on her sofa. They didn't test the banana peel or the banana, which is, I don't, it's kind of odd. Who ate the banana? Was it Sam or was it a guest? The dates. I know they tested the bowl, but I'm just saying there's a lot of other things that could have been tested that they didn't test. So also, again, I'm going to keep harping on this autopsy. We could know who ate the banana if they had checked her stomach contents, and we would know Samantha ate the banana. And I'm just saying that because what if Samantha didn't eat the banana? I don't know. It's just, there's a lot more questions, of course, than there are answers. And being that Samantha's family are doctors, I feel like they know the answers to these questions. So that's why I found it odd about the autopsy and Jewish law and the way they look at things and how they're doctors and they have this tradition and this way, the way they do things in their culture, and that's just how they do it. But when it comes to something this serious, like a deletion of someone, that they still stick with this Jewish tradition, this Jewish law, and they don't want the autopsy to be done correctly. That's that the Jewish law is more important than finding out what happened to a family member. Seems kind of strange to me. We'll continue.
You swear or affirm self truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Can you pull the microphone right in front of your mouth, please, and state your name and spell for the record?
Yes, my name is Eli Bowers. Last name is Bowers. First name is Eli.
Pull closer to the microphone.
Sure.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, can you please tell the jury what you do for a living?
Yes, I'm a special agent with the FBI here in Detroit.
And how long have you been a special agent with the FBI?
Right around 9 years.
And what are your current sort of responsibilities as a special agent with the FBI?
Currently, I'm a case agent on a child exploitation human trafficking squad, but for this particular case, I was exercising my duties as a crime scene photographer for the evidence response team.
Okay, and when you say evidence response team, what is the FBI's evidence response team?
So it's comprised of agents and professional staff who are specially trained in responding to various scenes, conducting searches, collecting evidence, things like that.
And how long have you been a member of the FBI's evidence response team?
It would be 6 or 7 years at this point.
And do you have any sort of specialized training in processing crime scenes?
Yes, I'm a crime scene photographer, which requires additional training beyond the typical evidence response team training.
Okay, and what is the typical evidence response team training consist of?
Well, it's a approximately 80-hour training, and it just goes over not only just general evidence collection, meaning you would find something and collect it, and you do that, with gloves on, certain bagging techniques, taping, sealing, things like that. But then we also get into the more forensic things that you may see, may see on TV, doing fingerprint collection, blatant fingerprint collection. Could be using alternative light source, trying to get something to fluoresce if there's blood stains. Just goes along the entire, the full gamut of what you would expect a forensically trained investigator to know how to do.
Okay, and what does the training consist of to become a crime scene photographer that you undertook?
So that would be, there's a little bit of a crime scene portion of the basic ERT training. I say ERT means evidence response team, but the additional training is approximately a week long, and that is just 1 full week of conducting crime scene documentation with a camera. And that would include not only just the documentation to see how a scene is, how it was left, but also some of the more complicated scenes, documenting things with scale, certain zoom levels, things like that for forensic analysis back in the lab.
Okay, and as part of your role with the FBI's evidence response team, did you go to the location of 1366 Joliet Place in Detroit on October 21st of 2023?
I did.
And what was the purpose of the FBI's evidence response team going to that location?
We were asked by, in this case, by the Violent Crime Task Force supervisor, who was assisting the local investigators with the with this incident that occurred, with this homicide that
And
occurred.
what is the Violent Crimes Task Force?
So that's a task force, multi-agency task force that is, it's ran out of the FBI building. The task force officers are police officers that are given federal enforcement and investigative authority, and that they assist agents and these task force officers assist with various investigations involving violent crimes.
Okay, and why did the Violent Crimes Task Force call the evidence response team to this particular scene?
Well, this particular scene, the local
crime scene techs, which were through the Detroit Police Department, needed some additional assistance with the documentation of the scene, just because the scene was a little bit more unusual.
Okay, what made it unusual?
Well, it's just the size of the scene, as far as in this case, in particular, it was the volume of blood that was in the scene, and they were looking for some guidance and some assistance in how best to document that vast quantity of blood spread over a reasonably large area.
And do you remember approximately what time you arrived on scene?
It was about 3 o'clock, give or take.
Would that be 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, it was.
And at the time that you arrived, I'm just showing on the screen here, page 124 of People's Exhibit 10, which has already been admitted. Do you see the suspected blood in that area on that photo?
Yes, I do.
By the time you arrived on scene, did the blood look like that?
Excuse me, not quite. It had changed. This is the first time I've seen this picture, but by the time we got there, the blood had dried, so it changes its appearance a little bit.
And in your experience processing crime scenes, what's the general difference in appearance between blood that hasn't dried and blood that has dried?
Well, first and foremost, it's just sort of common sense. If it's a wet liquid versus a dry one, you see that sort of glossy appearance. But something you could catch in a photo would be more typically that the blood becomes, it actually becomes a little bit more rust colored, a little bit browner. It kind of changes its hue a little bit.
Okay. And when you were on scene, approximately how many other individuals from the FBI were there with you?
There were 3 others, including me.
Okay. And when you were on scene, were you the one that was designated to take photographs of the scene from the FBI?
Yes, I was.
And did you take some photographs?
I did.
And what was your sort of overall objective in taking the photographs that you took?
It was to document, we like to say in the crime scene photographer world that we wanted to tell the story, meaning tell the story of potentially how something occurred, how something got there, but also to take it in a way that someone in a courtroom setting or someone sitting at a desk could see these pictures and be able to piece together in their minds what we saw when we got there without having to, just by looking at the pictures alone.
Okay. And when you took photos, did you use any sort of scales or measurements in connection with documenting the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose of doing that?
Well, after telling the story with those pictures, with the sort of the overall pictures, we also wanted to get into a bit of the nitty gritty as far as showing the dispersal of blood. And just how we do that by documenting. In this case, we did it in a grid pattern. We showed scale to show, say, how big a blood droplet is, how large a swath of dry blood is, something like that. It's just sort of lets the lab examiner, someone outside of the actual crime scene, really take a deep dive into perhaps coming up with theories on how blood got there, how much blood there was, things like that.
And prior to your testimony today, have you reviewed the photos that you took at this specific crime scene?
I have.
And do those photos fairly and accurately depict your own observations when you were out at the scene on October 21st?
Absolutely.
And I'm holding what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 13. Is it your understanding that the photos that you took are contained on this specific disc?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Proposed Exhibit 13.
Okay.
People's 13 will be admitted, and I think that'll probably be a good point to break for the evening, and we can start with going through photos.
Okay.
Okay, it sounds like we'll get through everything just in a couple minutes. So we're going to break for the evening, and hopefully nobody else has tire trouble tomorrow morning. I forgot to tell you last night, the juror badges that you have the phone, the court phone number on the back of it. So if you do run into a flat tire like I did this morning, or traffic that slows you down, just call us and let us know what your ETA is if you're running late. Okay.
Okay, so she's going to start tomorrow with these photos. Now I have to find that video because I'm interested in seeing the video, the photos that he took for oh boy. Now I have to find it. Okay, here we go. Let me go back to sharing the page. I'm so glad you guys are going to stick with me through this because all right, we got to go back.
Did one of those individuals prepare a sketch of the scene?
Yes, she did.
And have you had an opportunity to review that scene sketch?
I have.
I'm holding what's been marked as Proposed Exhibit 12. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Can you tell us what Proposed Exhibit 12 is?
So this is something we do with most of our search scenes, where we sketch just a simple sketch so that someone could look at the scene from an overhead perspective and see the layout of the room and things like that to further tell the story other than the images of the photographs that I take.
And recognizing that one of your colleagues actually prepared that, does that still fairly and accurately depict the scene that you helped to process on October 21st, 2023?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I move to admit Proposed Exhibit 12.
People's 12 is admitted.
And
Published.
thank you, Your Honor. And just taking a look at Exhibit 12, and I'm going to hand you our we have a different pointer today. Could you point the jury to where the front door of the townhome is depicted on that exhibit?
Sure. The front door would be right here.
Okay, and
That's the little, excuse me, you see the door here kind of hinged against the corner.
the little numbered markers in the area of the front door, what do those signify?
So in this case, and in a lot of cases, we use a sketch to further identify things that were within the area. For instance, if there was evidence seized or something like that, we would maybe put a number or something to see where it was. In this case, the numbers actually depicted grids of my photos because there was so much presumed blood in the area that when I sort of mentioned yesterday about taking pictures of the presumed blood with scale. So we had to have sort of zoomed in pictures. So each one of these is a grid that was numbered in the pictures with a scale.
And directly to the left of the front door, what is that area of the home?
This area? So this is just the kitchen area, like an eating area.
Okay, and then what is the larger area toward the top of the screen? Yes, right?
This is like a living room area, a couch, a TV, things like that.
Okay, and I want to ask you about just a handful of the photos that were admitted as Exhibit 13 yesterday.
Sure.
Can you remind the jury what time were you on scene on October 21st?
We arrived right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, and I want to show you on the screen here is page 43 of Exhibit 13. What area of the home are we looking at now?
This is actually, if you took a step back, if you were the taker of this photograph, and to the right would be the living room, and on the left there, those wooden things, it's actually the top of the basement stairwell. So this is actually looking down the hallway towards the front door.
Okay, and just briefly, I want to go back to one of the photos that was admitted yesterday in Exhibit 10, and specifically page 145 of Exhibit 10. Are we looking at basically the same area between these two photos?
Yes, just a slightly different angle there.
Okay, now looking at Exhibit 10, is there any difference to the nature of the reddish area that we're looking at compared to when you were on scene depicted here in Exhibit 13?
Yes.
And what is that, I guess, difference, if you can explain that to the jury?
So the difference that I see would be that this picture that we're looking at currently was taken in later, and I say that because the blood looks to be more dry.
And what is it about the I guess, the way the blood looks that leads you to believe that it would look more dry?
Sure. Well, we can sort of tell that the blood looks a little bit browner, a little more rust colored, which has to do with the oxidation of the iron in the blood.
And Your Honor, I would object. I think this goes beyond the scope of his expertise on how blood oxidizes. He that he's a forensic photographer, but as far as being an expert on blood splatter or blood, I guess the process of how blood oxidizes, I think that goes beyond the scope of his expertise.
I'll listen to the foundation. Do you have training when it comes to crime scene processing?
Yes.
And do you learn about blood when you underwent that training in crime scene processing?
Yes.
And what sort of training do you have when it comes to learning about the nature of blood that you might expect to find in a crime scene?
Well, that was another portion of the crime scene training that I took down with the FBI, and part of that is just determining generally what is blood when you're looking at it and things like that, and how it reacts over
And
time.
when you say down with the FBI, where was that training located?
That was down in, I believe it was down in Fredericksburg.
Okay.
So right in the DC metro area.
And as part of that training, did you learn about some of the characteristics of blood
Yes.
and some of the chemical characteristics of blood,
Yes.
biological characteristics of blood?
Yes.
And have you utilized that training to process other crime scenes beyond this one that we've discussed today?
I have.
And approximately how many scenes have you been involved in processing?
Total scenes with, as a member of the evidence response team, I would say dozens, if not hundreds.
Okay, and based on the training that you have when it comes to blood and the experience that you have processing dozens of hundreds of crime scenes, do you have some familiarity with the difference between blood that is wet and blood that is dry?
Yes.
And when we look at Exhibit 10, based on your training experience, does this appear to be primarily dry blood or primarily wet blood?
That would be primarily wet, just by judging based on this picture.
Okay, and then again, if we look at Exhibit 13 and again page 43, based on your training experience, are we looking at primarily dry blood or primarily wet blood?
Primarily dry.
And I want to just ask about a small handful of the photos that you took.
Sure.
Just starting with page 4 of Exhibit 13. Can you just describe to the jury, again, just for orientation purposes, where we're looking at here?
Sure, that's actually the view heading into the apartment through the front door. You can actually see where I would have been taking that last picture. I would have been looking at myself right there.
Okay, and how about page 18, where we're looking at here?
And this is a view from the living room facing towards those basement stairs and the hallway.
Okay, and how about page 19?
Sure, you can still see that bicycle there to the left, which we've seen in some of these. And this is, again, in the living room facing towards the front door. The front door would be to the forward and left.
And page 21?
And this is just facing the front door down the hallway, and it shows the stairs going up to the second floor as well as the stairs going down to the basement.
Page 22?
And this is from a similar vantage point, but this is from the living room and taken, we can see part of the kitchen as well.
Okay, now inside the living room, was there, obviously we're looking at some suspected blood, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, other than the suspected blood, did you see any sort of evidence of the room being in disarray?
Not in particular. I mean, there were some things moved, which we discussed with the Detroit crime scene, the techs that were there, as for like the couch cushions and things, but everything seemed to be, minus the blood, seemed to be just a normal lived-in home. There was, there weren't, everything was still on the shelves. There were tables and chairs were still on their feet. Just pretty normal house.
Okay. And in the course of your sort of presence on the scene, did you have the opportunity to observe any potential foot impressions?
Yes.
And can you just kind of describe in general terms the foot impressions that you observed?
Sure. We observed some foot impressions that appeared to be caused by a bare foot. There was no like tread pattern or anything like that. And we noticed it in the blood, or the presumed blood down that hallway.
Okay. And were those, to the best of your recollection, were those impressions oriented in one or both or multiple directions?
I remember some in the heading out of the house, but I'd have to look at my pictures again if for any other orientations.
Okay. But did you see inside the blood, did you observe any foot impressions that appeared to have any sort of treads or anything consistent with a shoe print?
Not that I can recall, no.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Special Agent.
Good morning.
Now, you indicated that, I guess, one of your objectives when you photograph is to tell a story, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you tell the story, are you creating the story or are you reading the story that's already been created?
Well, let me explain it this way. I'm telling a story, meaning that someone could be in my shoes behind that camera and seeing what I am seeing on the scene.
Okay.
Meaning telling my own story with the camera, so someone could orient themselves to me.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And isn't it correct when you got to the scene had already been manipulated somewhat?
Yes.
Okay. Things were changed around, such as the cushion from the couch, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Such as a purse that was moved to the kitchen table, correct?
I don't remember that specifically, but that could be yes.
So what was this?
A purse.
A purse.
If we can go to Exhibit 13, Slide 8. And you would agree that this is a purse that's depicted on this table, correct?
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
On this table. You see this
Oh,
brown?
oh, yes, I see it.
Okay.
It looks to be, yes.
Okay. And were you aware that this purse was found on a bench by a bike?
No, this is exactly how the scene was when I got there.
Okay. If we can go to Exhibit 10, photo 268. Does that appear from your perspective to be the identical purse that's depicted in Exhibit 13, Slide 8?
It could be, but I'm not an
Okay.
expert in that. Or,
Okay. So it'd be fair that you did not review the prior photographs that were taken by Detroit police?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay. Now, when you tell a story, isn't it important to know how this story was, I guess, originally written?
No, because I'm telling you that the story I'm telling is my story and how I got there, so someone can orient themselves to the scene when I arrive and how we leave it.
Okay. So it's not, so I guess what you're saying is not important how the scene was originally orientated before you got there. That's not important to you?
No, it's not.
Okay. Now, if we could go to Exhibit 10, Slide 251. Now, it is your opinion that the majority of this blood that we see here is wet blood?
No, you see some wet and some dry in that picture.
Okay. But you would agree that the majority of this blood that we're seeing in this photograph appears to be dry, correct?
In that photograph, it seems to be, yes.
Okay. And just for the record, this is Exhibit 10, Slide 251. And you would agree this is the photograph that Detroit police took, not yourself, correct?
I wouldn't know who took this picture.
Okay, but you just know you didn't take it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this picture, as far as you know, would have been prior to your arrival at 3 p.m., correct?
Yes, my understanding was that they took photos before I arrived.
Okay, fair enough. Now, would you agree from your observation that this is a high concentration of blood in this particular area?
Yes, it seems to be quite a bit of blood.
Okay. And you would also agree, based upon your observation and your photographing this same area, that this particular area had a higher concentration of blood versus any other area in the apartment?
Are you talking about the hallway or just the hallway in general? Yes.
Okay. And would you agree that this to be pooling of blood in this particular area, in some areas, especially where it seems to be darker?
That seems to be what it is, yes.
Okay. And would you agree that in order for blood to pool, well, just the definition of pooling blood, that means it's more blood than maybe a drop or two, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree that, I guess, in order for blood to pool from an individual, they would actually maybe have to be in this particular area for a particular amount of time?
I mean, if the blood is coming directly out of a person, yes, unless it was put into a vessel beforehand and dumped on the floor, that would be the only way to get blood on.
Okay. So you would just to be clear now, to
Yeah.
be clear, you agree that from your opinion that the body may have been laying in this position for amount of time in this area, correct?
I would really have no way to tell that.
Oh, you wouldn't? Oh, but you're an expert as far as blood identification, correct?
Yes, but not an expert in how blood leaves the body.
Okay, but you are an expert as far as when blood does leave the body, when it's on the ground and it needs to be photographed. You're an expert as far as determining if it's dry or if it's wet, correct?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call myself an expert in that. I would say that I have just a lot of experience in determining the difference between dried and
Okay.
wet blood.
Well, forgive me, not an expert, but based upon your experience,
Mhm.
based upon your experience, you're able to give an opinion on, in your opinion, on whether or not this blood is dry or wet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you make that analysis on when blood is dry or when it's wet, you're determining in your mind or calculating on how long the blood may have been there, correct? Before it dried.
No.
But in order for the blood to be dry, you're coming to the conclusion that it was there longer than wet blood, correct?
Something to be dry would have to be wet first. So yes, there would have to be some time in there.
Okay, okay, thank you. Now, did you take a picture? Well, why did you take a picture of, if we can go to exhibit number 10. Forgive me. Exhibit number 10, photo 62. Now, you would agree that you did not take any pictures of the screen latch leading out the house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice that?
Did I notice it? I don't understand.
I mean, when you were taking your photos, did you notice this particular object, which is the latch on the screen?
I noticed the latch on the screen door. Yes.
Okay. Did you notice that it had blood on it?
I don't remember.
Okay. But that would have been, you think, a necessary photograph to tell the story?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. Because you would agree that this photograph could tell the story of somebody leaving the house, correct? Maybe covered in blood, correct?
So we were asked to take additional pictures.
My question is, you would agree that this particular photograph could tell the story of somebody leaving the house with blood on their hands, correct?
It would tell the story that there's blood on the latch, yes.
Okay. Do you know how long it takes for blood to, I guess, gain a rust color?
It would depend on the quantity of blood
The quantity?
and on what surface it is, the weather. It could depend on,
Okay.
almost an infinite number of factors.
Okay. And if we go back to exhibit number 10, 251, are you able to determine how much blood this is?
No.
Okay. So I guess it'd be fair that you're in no position to, I guess, give an opinion on how long this blood would take to get to this particular state. correct?
No, absolutely not.
Did you photograph the basement?
I believe I just photographed the basement stairs because of the blood that was on them.
Okay. Were you aware that there was a sink in the basement?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. If we can go to exhibit number 10, slide 304. And if you could, I'm sorry, I think the turn of the contrast a little bit, the picture seems to be very dark compared to mine.
Sorry, it might be, I don't know that I have the ability to control the contrast on that
Okay.
screen for my,
Okay, maybe if I could plug in my laptop.
well,
Maybe
I think that
the brightness?
yeah, I think the brightness would be determined by that screen and not, like the sort of originating screen.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I missed the page number. What was that again?
304. You see a seat depicted here, correct?
I do.
If we could zoom in, this may be it might be hard to see. If we can zoom in by the sink, by the washing machine, we can go down to the floor. I'm sorry. You see that little spot next to the washing machine?
Yes.
Could that be suspected blood?
I suppose it could be.
And just to be clear, you didn't take any pictures of this basement, correct?
No.
And you didn't take any pictures of the sink, correct?
No.
Okay. And you didn't take any pictures of the bottom of the steps leading to the sink, just to be clear.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Space Agent. No further questions.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just briefly, sir, what was the primary purpose of the photos that you took on the scene?
Sure. So the scene had already been searched and photographed by the Detroit Police Department. So the purpose of us taking photographs was to specifically document with scale and our sketch and all the close-up shots of the actual blood, the quantity of blood that was that we could see, the blood splatter, the blood pooling, the blood smearing, all that stuff. So that was our primary goal. We didn't search the rest of the residents.
Okay, and if we look through your photos, just sort of as an example, page 91 of Exhibit 13, would this be an example of a scale photograph?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and what's the scale that I guess is depicted in this photo?
Well, so this is
Your Honor, this goes beyond the scope of cross.
Well, Judge, with all due respect, I think the defense counsel was trying to suggest there was some kind of deficiency in the work that Special Agent Bowers did on the scene. I'm just trying to establish that the purpose was not to re-photograph the entire unit.
Objection overruled.
I guess can you just explain the scale that we're looking at in general terms?
sure. That's your our general forensic photography scale, and that has different markings as far as measurements. And then up at the top in the yellow, we have, if you would zoom in, you would see a number that would correspond with one of the numbers on the sketch. But that scale is used, we capture it in our picture because then a person in the lab or an expert in blood spatter or anything else would be able to compare the size of the blood with a known quantity, a known unit of measurement on the scale.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Any further requests?
No problem.
Any questions from the jury? We don't see any hands. Thank you. Please give that back to the prosecutor and then come back around the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to be all for today. But I want to give the takeaways from the FBI agent. So my takeaways from them calling in the FBI is basically, once again, the volume of blood. There was so much blood that the Violent Crime Task Force asked for help from the FBI. There was so much blood that they didn't know what to do, that clearly they were too inexperienced. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard the trial the first go round, but most of these evidence technicians had only been on staff for a couple of years. They're all very young. Even the police officers, the first little guy that we heard, he had only been on for less than 2 years. The guy that he was with, his partner, had only been on for like 8 months. So these people in Detroit are very very young and very not well trained as police officers, evidence technicians, what have you. So they call in the FBI for additional help, because this is not only a very, very bloody crime scene, but it involves a very high profile person in Detroit. Samantha Wall was the president of the Isaac Agree Synagogue, the last freestanding synagogue in Detroit. She was a very political person. She was involved again in Dana Nessel's campaign, Elisa Slotnick's campaign, the Chang campaign. She is very involved in the Elemental P community. She is very involved in feminism, women's whatever. She's very pro-choice. So she was very, very involved. She was involved in a Muslim Jewish coalition. She just was a very, very public figure. So they bring in the FBI to take additional pictures of this blood evidence, which is very ironic because they didn't do anything with these pictures. They didn't follow through. They didn't come up with a scenario of how this crime happened. And if they did, they just crashed it up, threw it in a ball and threw it in the trash. My question is, I saw in one of the pictures, where are the sofa cushions at? Did they take the sofa cushions? Did they test the sofa cushions? I don't recall Brian asking, as we go further into this, anyone, where are the sofa cushions? Did they test them? Also, what since he is basically capturing this scene, and I know this based off my old career, when you write a narrative, and you have to, like he mentioned, when you get on the stand, you have to be able to have it said and done and pictured in a way that it's almost as if you were there. You have to have it buttoned up. I keep saying this, buttoned up, put in a little box, wrapped in a little present with a pretty little bow on top, as if it is all done, as if you can envision it, as if you were there. Okay. So when that jury gets this case, they have to be able to see it happen. They have to envision this. You have to set the story, set the stage. Okay. And that's what the prosecution is supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be setting the stage. So far, we have seen zero evidence, as the prosecution stated in their opening argument. There would be no evidence that's going to link Michael Jackson Bolanos to this crime. And so far, there has been no evidence to link him to this crime. So I see where Brian is going with the basement situation, okay, where he's trying to say, you guys completely ignored the basement. You completely ignored upstairs. I can see why they kind of compartmentalized the scene to basically the living room area, okay? But my issue with it is even though they compartmentalized it to that area, they didn't do anything to see. If they did, it didn't show up in court, and at least not on TV. And it wasn't shown by the judge, whether she allowed it or didn't allow it, I don't know. But there was no other scenario put in that we could see. So all we know is that it was just very, very bloody. I cannot emphasize enough how every single witness has gotten on the stand and discussed how awful bloody this scene was. And I just don't understand how anyone could have done this and gotten out of there unscathed and left so much of a horrifically bloody scene and gotten out of there without anything on them. So This is just very shocking to me. And also, he didn't take these pictures until 3 p.m. So it's a different scene. And like I said, again, the sofa cushions are missing. Where are the sofa cushions? I didn't see the pillows either. Where are the pillows? Did they take any tests on those? Did they do anything with those? So I'm just curious. So if you guys think of any more questions, please let me know. I'm just going through this because it's a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas. It's a lot of, hindsight is 2020. I realize that, but this is curious and important because honestly, it's eye-opening experience to see how things are handled. Obviously, there's a lot of corruption in Detroit and in Michigan, but I'm seeing it in other places. It's everywhere, of course, but this isn't the only case. There's other cases out there that are very similar to Samantha Wall. And in a lot of these cases, they don't want them solved because they would rather it go like this, or even rather the wrong person be put away than go against their own community and their own people, which is, I don't even know where to begin with that. Wow. It's very shocking. I don't know how you could live or be in the same building or presence with someone that you possibly know did something to the person that you love. But because of your, I don't know, your law or whatever, you have to allow that person to still be in your fold. It just is baffling to me. Baffling. So I get it. I mean, God says forgive, right? We should forgive, but it doesn't mean that person should go unpunished, right? I mean, does that make sense? I don't understand. I don't get it. And I know that they believe in judicial law. I know that they believe that the justice system should do what the justice system should do, but only to people that are not in their own community, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to be as nice about this as I can, you guys, but it's very difficult for me when this is not the only case. I'm going to do another case that is very, very, very interesting that I saw the other day. And when I saw it, I was like, what the heck? This is so similar to Samantha Wall. And this case happened like 13, 14 years ago. And it's closed technically, but it's so similar. And it's it's literally like apples to apples. It's crazy. So I can't wait to get that video out to you guys so you can see that the amount of cover up and such that happens in this type of community actually happens, and they're okay with that. And that's crazy. So I appreciate you all watching. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget, this channel is not monetized, so please feel free to buy me a coffee or Cash App or PayPal, whatever you want to do. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please tell all your friends. And again, I appreciate you all. 감사합니다.